Greetings and welcome. We are so excited you are here for today's presentation on growing family literacy connections for your young reader. I'm Dr. Kelly Moran, the Director of Instructional Programs for the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve, and I'm proud to bring you today's presentation. At the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve, we pride ourselves on providing quality programming and services to all students, educators, and families within our region. We work together with community partners to provide innovative solutions to today's educational needs. Our objectives in today's presentation are to do a couple of things. We want to connect as audience and speaker so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. We want to go over the science of reading. We want to share 10 ways you can grow and scale and enhance literacy development within your family and your living space, and then provide you with resources that you can use moving forward. So a little bit about me, your speaker. What brings me here today to talk about this very important topic, one that I'm very passionate about? I started my teaching career as a third grade teacher and became a literacy coach soon after. From there, I took a position as an assistant principal at an elementary school. I've served as director of curriculum and federal programs coordinator, also a building principal at the elementary level. I've worked to obtain my principal's license in elementary and middle grades and earned my doctoral degree from Youngstown State University. I encourage any of you watching this presentation to connect with me on LinkedIn because our conversation here doesn't end when the video recording ends. I do have a personal side as well, and I want to share this with you because I have a vested interest in early literacy. Not only have I devoted my professional career to helping teachers and families achieve academic success, but I'm also the proud parent and mother of 2 young budding readers. I'm married to a teacher as well, and we spend a lot of our time engaging in activities together as a family, providing our children with a well-rounded life experience. I'd like to get to know you a little bit better as well. So during the recording, be thinking about some of these things. What's your story and who do you represent? What grade or grade levels are the children in your care attending? How do you personally feel about reading? Is it something you enjoy? Maybe it makes you feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's a challenge for you. Take some time to reflect upon that for yourself. Also, do you wish you read more? Is it something that you don't have time for or you have competing priorities with? Do you have a child or know of a child who is struggling to read? And on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best, how equipped do you feel to help those struggling readers in your life? As you think about the answers to these questions, I assure you that no matter what your answers are, no matter what your past experiences include, today's presentation will give you some true, tangible ideas that you can take with you and share with others. So, let's move into our first objective for today's presentation, the science of reading. What is it and what does that mean? We're fortunate to be represented in the state of Ohio in our educational plans with Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. Our state has prioritized that our literacy goals and instruction be centered around the science of reading. So what is this science of reading? Well, it is a vast interdisciplinary conglomerate of research that spans many decades. It's an accumulation of research studies and evidence. And the preponderance of evidence shows how proficient reading and writing develops, what the best ways to instruct literacy include, why some individuals have difficulty with literacy skills, and how we can more effectively assess. The science of reading is not an ideology. It's not a philosophy. It's not a boxed curriculum or set of materials. It's not even really an approach to instruction. It is an accumulation of research that informs how we teach literacy. So if I were able to give you a crash course in the science of reading, I'd want to make sure you learn about a couple of things. The first being the brain, how the reading brain develops. The next is teaching you about a vision called the simple view of reading. Then you'd have to know a little bit about Scarborough's reading rope. I'd want to inform you about explicit systematic instruction, as well as what diagnostic assessment is. So let's briefly touch on each of those. Our brain. The brain is one of the most fascinating and powerful parts of our human body. What we know from the science of reading about brain development is that brains are really, really good at developing habits. It's the whole reason why you can be taught how to brush your teeth and you don't forget how to do that. You naturally know how to do that day after day because neural pathways have been wired and strengthened and cemented in your mind to know how to do that. So what does that mean for reading? Well, skilled readers, their brain actually changes from birth over time as they are learning. There is rewiring that takes place in several different portions of the brain. And through fMRI brain studies, we can see differences in activation in different areas of the brain between skilled readers and inefficient readers. When brains encounter new information, they're looking to store that information, and routines and habits are really powerful. So what's critical here to know and understand is if that we are helping students or teaching young children ways to read that are inefficient, what we're doing is helping them create poor habits and routines that they will continue to rely on that do them a disservice as they progress through higher grades and encounter more challenging reading material. An example of this would be asking a child to use a picture cue to read a word. When you do that, a child then is relying on pictures or visuals to try and read, which is very inefficient as that child ages and encounters more challenging academic reading in the higher grades. So some key takeaways we've learned from science about the reading brain. The brain reorganizes itself when it learns to read. We are not born learning to read, nor are we wired to be able to automatically read like we are for speech. Language and talking is something we naturally pick up, but reading is not. The brain needs to reorganize itself. We know that the brain maps letters to sounds. And what that means is that when they've studied really proficient, skilled readers, even though it seems they're reading so quickly and automatically recognizing words by sight, skilled readers' brains are actually identifying so very quickly letters and the sounds associated with those letters. Very critical for us to be focusing on those letter sounds and how they combine to make words. There's areas in our brain that stores schematic knowledge, information about the world. Pick a topic. Any topic is of great value to having conversations with your child and or exploring together. New knowledge that we learn as we age and experience latches on or attaches like Velcro to the existing knowledge that we have in our brains. And we know that from science, from those fMRI images, that there are differences in brain activity between struggling readers and really skilled, proficient readers. The great news is the brain also has plasticity. So when we can inform conversations and reading material and support and instruction in ways that are validated by the science, we can help rewire and restructure the brain. After knowing a little bit about the brain, it's important to know about this reading model called the simple view of reading. It was developed in 1986 by Go and Tunmer. The simple view of reading is the crux of what Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement is built upon. This is the framework educators know well to be able to teach skilled reading comprehension. You'll notice a couple things about the simple view of reading. It is a multiplication equation. The end result, or our goal for all children, is strong reading comprehension. The equation is a multiplication equation by design. It's not additive. So if any one of these variables in the equation were a 0, our end product would be a 0. The important thing here is that it's a combination between decoding words, or understanding the letters in words and the sounds associated with those letters, times knowledge of language. So language being vocabulary, syntactical structures, background knowledge. Those two things combined are what gives us reading comprehension. If I were to take that simple view of reading and slide it under a microscope or a magnifying glass so that I could look even more deeply into it, I would notice that even though it's simple, there's a lot of complexity layers to that simple view. So within word recognition or decoding part of the simple view, that includes many multiple skills. So the exciting part here as parents and caregivers is that we have a variety of things that we could be enhancing value or working on with our children. The better we get at decoding words or understanding how to pronounce the words we see on the page, the more fluent we become in our reading. This fluency bridge is what helps us get closer to our end result of reading comprehension. Now remember, in the simple view, there's two parts, the word recognition and the language comprehension. So if I were to zoom in more closely at the language comprehension, I would see a whole different list of skills that, again, so exciting, I can work on any one of these with my child. I can help my child learn more vocabulary, or I can help my niece or nephew or granddaughter develop more background knowledge or make inferences through conversation and communication and experiences, which is really exciting. Another very important model that we should be familiar with when we're talking about the science of reading is Scarborough's reading rope. Again, if I were to take the simple view of reading you see in the up-hand corner there and slide it under a microscope, I would see many, many more discrete skills that are separated out. And the model here, imagine this metaphor of a rope or a braid. When you take all of these individual discrete skills and start strengthening them and winding them together, the braid or rope becomes very tight and hard to break apart. And that's the metaphor for that skilled, fluent, consistent, good reading. So keep this image with you to remind you of a couple of things. One, reading is made up of many, many, many different skills. That's very exciting because it gives us a wide variety of things in which we can help our child. What we need to be aware of, though, is also if there's a deficit or a struggle in just one of these areas, that can really dismantle the fluidity and the systematized skilled reading in which we are hoping to achieve. I mentioned at the start when we were talking about the science of reading that we needed to know a little bit about something called explicit instruction. The science of reading research has informed us that there is a clear, productive way to teach students how to read. And one of those ways is with explicit instruction. We do not want to leave reading up to chance, and we don't want students guessing. The clearer and more direct we can be when working with young children or developing minds on how to learn literacy skills, the better. So consider if your child is in an educational program now, you may want to have a conversation with his or her teacher or school administrator on whether or not the program is using explicit instruction. Some key things you want to be looking for is it systematic? Is it sequential? Is it cumulative? Is it explicit? And is it diagnostic? And in just a few seconds, I'll explain all of those terms so you're familiar. The image you might keep in mind, though, are tasks such as brushing your teeth or learning how to tie your shoe. It would be very rare that an individual learns how to do either one of these activities just naturally on their own by discovery. If you have a young child and you've taught them how to tie their shoe, or you're in that process now, you may be able to relate to how painstaking it can be and how much patience that requires. And the way you teach a child to brush their teeth or tie their shoes is modeling for them, explaining in clear terms, practicing again and again, demonstrating, not letting them guess or try to figure it out on their own. So when we're talking about explicit instruction, consider for yourself how your child is being instructed and how you are helping him or her at home. Are you presenting tasks in a logical, organized way, starting with the beginning and the most simplest? Is the support or help you're giving your child sequential? Are you starting with more simpler tasks and then progressing to more complex activities? Is it cumulative? Are you revisiting things that were taught or practiced to ensure that you're getting to mastery? So we're building upon things and revisiting them. Children lead very busy lives and entertain or encounter many different stimuli. Their brains are also developing, so it's hard to remember things. When we focus on being cumulative, we're revisiting things that have been taught in the past. Explicit. This is direct teaching and support, not asking kids to guess or befuddle or get lost on their own. There are times in education and exploration and development for that, but when it comes to reading, it's too critical of a skill to leave that up to chance. Diagnostic. Diagnostic means, are we gathering information to know where the strengths are and where the areas for growth live so that we can be more prescriptive in how we help children? I like to use this image when I'm thinking about diagnostic instruction. Many of us have had experiences going to a doctor, and so we're familiar with this idea of the routine checks and assessment measures that our doctor might give us, such as checking our height or our weight, assessing our blood pressure, maybe even doing a couple blood work tests. Those are all diagnostic screening measures that help inform your doctor of next steps, whether that be a treatment regime or further additional tests. The same is true for us in helping kids to read. The more data and assessment we can collect on a child, the more information we have about him or her as a reader and how we can help them. So, if you're following along, now's a great time to pause the recording and check your knowledge. Recreate on your own piece of paper the simple view of reading. I'm hopeful that I taught it to you in a direct, explicit way in which you can now recall the information and recreate the diagram. If you are interested on the topic of science of reading and are craving more information, I've got 3 great places in which I would channel your attention. There's a document called the Science of Reading Primer that's been published by Amplify. It's linked in the slide deck and can easily be found in a Google search. There's also a short video that gives a great overview on the science of reading. And if you enjoy podcasts, might I recommend Amplify's Science of Reading podcast. All right, our first objective of today's presentation was to get a crash course in understanding in the science of reading. Next, let's move on so you can actually have some great ideas and ways in which you can help the child you love so much engage in better reading skills. There's many things you can do, no matter how equipped you feel. One of my favorites is have high expectations and belief in your child. Find ways to make reading enjoyable, enhance and use your home language, visit your library, and have good lines of communication with your child's teacher. As a teacher myself, I love to teach using metaphors and analogies. And so I'm going to give you 10 different plays for a coach's playbook on how to help your young reader. Imagine you are a coach of an athletic team. And for those of you who've participated in sports at any time in your life, maybe you can be thinking about some of your experiences on those teams or in those sports and working with a coach. If you want to follow along and take notes as well, I encourage you to do so. The more you write and use tactile interactions with your hand, the more neurons that are firing in your brain. So step into that mindset of being a coach for your child or the child you care most about in your life and their reading, and I'm going to give you the best 10 plays that you want in your coaching playbook. We're going to talk about everything from recruiting to getting in the game, practicing those fundamentals, and keeping our eye on the clock. What do we know about good coaches? Well, many successful coaches cannot do it alone. They recruit. They take the time to search out really good talent and bring that talent onto their coaching staff in the form of assistant coaches or trainers. You're not in this alone. Do some recruiting on your end to find assistant coaches that can help you support your child in reading. That could be reaching out to the Educational Service Center, finding people at the library to help, or talking to your child's teacher. There's also a plethora of online digital support tools that are free, and we've got those linked in at the end of the presentation as well. But take some time to recruit those resources so that you can use them more adeptly with your child. Next, coaches are great about scheduling and enforcing practices. The reason why they do that is they know how critical practicing discrete skills are. Many of us would never learn how to do a flip turn in the pool on the first day of swimming. But after weeks and months of practicing, I bet we can nail it. So take some time to reflect for yourself. What does literacy practice look like in your life and in your home? Are there ways you can set up opportunities for more practice? Can you find time to read before bed as a family? How can you include literacy activities during mealtime or car rides? Maybe you and your child can record a reading and share it with a loved one. How about offering to do a chore for your child while he or she does their reading? Maybe you can go to an animal shelter and read to animals there, or even create a challenge for yourself as a family to get more reading practice in. Let's move on to hydration. Coaches know that it's more than just talent and practice. We need to fuel our athletic and physical bodies in order to perform best. So when you're hydrating with literacy, consider the quality of the material you're consuming. Is the information you're consuming giving you the best, robust knowledge? There's great ways to hydrate out there. You can enhance your child's knowledge, which was that second part of the simple view of reading, by doing things like watching documentaries together, finding a topic of interest and researching it on the internet. You can play trivia games, go to a museum, attend a library program, or spend some time in a park. Let's talk about fundamentals. It's hard to be able to win on the basketball court if you first don't know how to dribble. The same is true for reading and literacy. We need to start with the most basic skills and work on those. There's wonderful things that you can do tactile with your child to help strengthen those skills. An example is using a pipe cleaner with some beads. You can use the beads to represent different letters and sounds in words and blend, bring together, or segment those sounds out. You can also be practicing with vocabulary cards at your dinner table as you enjoy a meal and talk together. There's many different ways you can embed simple games throughout your day to help work on those fundamental skills. Another recommendation I have is magnetic letters. Use these on your washer or dryer or refrigerator. Keep them in the car. Travel with a cookie sheet, and you can be building and breaking apart words all the time. Coaches invest time in studying their opponent. They know which team or which athlete they are going to be up against in the next competition. This is intentional and done by design to help give the team an edge when coming to that competition. When it comes to literacy, take time to watch your child read, talk with your child's teacher, and really know what barriers or obstacles you're up against. Is the opponent for your child's reading motivation? Is it routines? Is it structure? Or maybe it's not explicit instruction taking place in the child's program. But you're not going to know what the obstacles are if you don't take some time to study them. And if you're unsure, that's where you reach out to your partners, your assistant coaches. Contact an educational service center, a teacher, or a community resource agency to help get some more information about your child's reading habits and reading skills. Great coaches watch a lot of film. Preparation is key and important. When coaches are watching film, they're revisiting and reflecting on performance. They take in that information to know what their next steps are going to be, their next practice or their next drills or goals. Consider for yourself, how often are you reflecting on literacy habits in your home? If you're not paying attention, things can easily slip through with a busy lifestyle and multiple obligations. So watch film in your living area. Are you reading daily, weekly? Is your child reluctant to do homework? You need to do some of that self-assessment to know where you're currently performing to take yourself to the next level. If you've had experience in athletics, hopefully you've had experience with really great coaches. But I know some of us can say that we've had a coach or two who maybe wasn't the most motivating. Maybe they took a strong authoritarian approach and were constantly pointing out our weaknesses. For many of us, we don't thrive in those environments. The great coaches we remember and those excellent coaches who got the best out of us as athletes were those coaches who helped celebrate small wins and small victories along the way. So this is your reminder in your playbook to also celebrate those small wins and victories. Find ways to reward yourself as the caregiver or parent in this game, as well as reward your child or your reader. How can you build in rewards such as going to get new books from the library or visiting a bookstore? Maybe you order an educational game online that you can enjoy and play with your child as a reward. Maybe you can honor that child at a mealtime or with a different treat. Or simply just write a note to your child and place it in his or her lunchbox or on their bed. Not only are you pouring into their confidence and self-esteem, you're giving them an excuse to read something that you wrote. Excellent coaches know very well their current performance and their statistics. I can attest to this firsthand as the wife of a varsity coach of 2 sports, track and cross country. My husband pretty much travels everywhere he goes with a clipboard with lots of numbers and statistics on it. The reason why he does that is because he cares deeply about the performance of his athletes, and he uses that information to plan the next workouts and training routines. Here again, we need to do some goal setting and reflection for ourselves as we grow in literacy. If we think that we're reading enough at home but not really measuring it, well then how can we improve in that area? Are we setting challenges for ourselves and are we modeling for our child? Ways you can do this are things like journaling with your child or drawing pictures back and forth, because that will even elicit communication and dialogue between you and your child. Trying books on tape or books on CD, or reading together as a family 3 times a week. Find a system, though, to know your statistics and chart your progress. Not only will this help hold you accountable, it'll get your young reader engaged and motivated in revisiting the activity multiple times. When you're watching exciting games, it can be, in athletic events, it can be really fun. And I think many of us have had an experience where we've seen a coach get really into the game. Sometimes they even cross the boundary line. It's because those coaches know they need to roll up their sleeves and participate alongside their athletes. They're walking the walk and talking the talk, so to speak. So how are we, as the adult important role models in our child's life, getting in the game alongside them? Think back to the beginning of the presentation. I asked you some questions about your enjoyment levels of reading and how equipped you feel as a reader. Even if you don't love reading, it's important to model for your child this important critical skill. So find ways to flip through a magazine together or watch a documentary. Maybe there's flashcards or a game you can purchase. It doesn't always have to be reading something challenging, but be mindful of how you can get in the game alongside your child to develop literacy habits. And finally, keeping your eye on the clock. During athletic events and performances, coaches know how many minutes are remaining in the half or the quarter, how many seconds have gone by on that lap in the pool, or if they're taking a mile split for the track runner on the track. Our time, although especially as a parent, some of the days seem really long and our weeks can seem really long, time is flying by quickly. And don't forget those pictures of the brain. Time is of the essence because neural pathways are being cemented in our child's brain, and so we want to be cognizant of how much time we have and using that time with our child wisely. So, if I had to take all of those 10 great plays for your playbook and leave you with just 3 really important things from today's presentation, here's what I want to tell you. My 3 best recommendations to help your child or any child grow in their literacy development would be read together, talk more, and build knowledge. The research and literature is clear. The studies all say that the more that you read together with children, the more successful they are in their literacy development. I've yet to come across a study that says reading together more is harmful to children. I do want to mention this important note, however. Despite all of our efforts and using the science of reading, teaching in explicit instruction, utilizing all the 10 plays in our playbook, there are some individuals who do struggle to read and have deficits in their brain rewiring. There is a term known as dyslexia that describes the profile of an individual who very much struggles to read. So if you ever have concerns that someone in your family might have dyslexia or are showing signs for dyslexia, I encourage you to get more information, speak out, ask questions, talk to pediatricians, your child's teacher, any representative from a community agency. Don't forget to talk more. Talking is learning. It's enhancing children's oral communication skills, it's building their knowledge, and it's giving their brain a chance to recycle and synthesize new information. There's a great study called the 30 million word gap. Researchers have studied how different approaches to talking with your children can make for a wide-ranging gap in those students who've experienced a lot of talk and vocabulary from their surroundings versus those children who have not experienced a lot of conversational talking and taking turns in talking. If you're interested on that 30 million word gap, I'd like to direct you to a video that you can find on YouTube. Conversations, although it may be hard to think about how to start, asking questions is a great way to start. In our home, we have a couple of tools as well that we keep handy. These are called table talk conversation starters, and they're just questions. And you can even get these conversation starters for free by searching the internet, asking it to generate questions to ask your child. Because here's what we know. Knowledge is important. And if we get that knowledge from talking, we're helping our child become a better reader. There's a famous study called the baseball study. And researchers took middle school kids, and what they assumed or hypothesized was that strong readers or skilled readers would score better on a test of comprehension about a topic. What they did was they gave these middle school readers a passage about baseball, and they put the students into 4 groups: high reading ability and lots of knowledge about baseball, high reading ability but not so much knowledge about baseball, low reading ability with knowing a lot about baseball though, and low reading ability and not knowing a lot about baseball. What they found was striking. You had children with high reading ability who scored very high on that test, as was hypothesized. But the surprising finding was the students with low reading ability, if they knew a lot about baseball, they scored right behind those high readers. So what does this tell us? Yes, reading skills and ability is important, but almost equally as important is knowledge. And if we can get knowledge from having conversations or learning things or visiting museums or exploring topics, we are doing our child a huge favor in his or her literacy development. As we conclude today's presentation, we want you to be able to collect resources. There's a lot of tools out there that are available, not just online, but with your community agencies and partners. So reach out, stay in touch, explore, recruit some coaches, and enjoy learning with your child. My final takeaway for you is a calendar of literacy activities that was produced by the State Library of Ohio. You can find it by Googling Day by Day Ohio Family Literacy Calendar. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm excited for you and your child's literacy journey.